Anyways, let's move on to happier things. Let's move on to Firefly. I would say Firefly as a character is very fun. She is a break DPS, which, again, for those listeners who might not be familiar with Honkai, there is a toughness bar on all characters that have elemental weaknesses. If you hit them with elemental attacks, it deals a certain amount of toughness damage, which once you deplete, the character or the enemy breaks and they take more damage. Technically, when they're unbroken, they take 90% of whatever damage they would have taken. When they're broken, they take 100%. So they take roughly 10%, slightly more than 10% more damage when they're broken, as well as having secondary effects depending on the element type. We're not getting into that, and it's not the purview of this discussion. Firefly is built around basically breaking enemy toughness and then doing loads of damage while enemies are in that broken state and so forth. She has built-in super break damage, so she does not technically require Harmony MOC or Harmony MC to do super break damage. It's just a lesser version of it. You are still, I'm going to dip into team building because it's very simple. Robin has one team. You want to bring Robin, you want to bring Ruan Mei, and you want to bring Harmony MC. The sustain character can be switched out freely. I'm not going to say they don't matter, but for the most part, they're irrelevant. Gallagher is who I run with them, and he's doing 100k breaks, super breaks, because he's built around break effect. That's pretty cool, but not relevant to Firefly, who is consistently doing 300k damage each turn. The way that her kit, I'm jumping around, so I do apologize, but as a break character, wants lots of break effect, and the way that her kit functions is you don't have to worry about energy for her. Whenever she does her skill, she gains a fixed percentage of energy. She has a 240 energy ultimate, but every time she does her skill, she gets 50% of that. So she generates 120 per attack, which means roughly it's going to be 2 attacks per rotation in order to get her back into her ultimate. But when she enters combat, she starts at 50% if she's not already at 50%. So you will jump into her ult after the first skill that she uses, and she will be fast because you want her to be very fast for reasons I'm about to get into. So she'll probably go first, your other characters will act, and then you'll ult with her. When you ult, she goes into a Super Saiyan mode, similar to, I always get her and Jingwan switched. Jingliu, thank you. Jingliu has her ultimate mode. Firefly has something very similar. She uses her ult, she goes into her super mode, she action advances 100%, and from that point on, her attacks with her skill imparts a fire weakness onto enemies, so she can break their bars. She also has universal weakness break, so she will break any toughness bar type, even if they're not fire weak, but she does more if it is fire weak. And she gets super break damage, as well as a bunch of other secondary effects, which are not necessarily relevant for the purposes of this video, or this discussion. From there, she's going to kill whatever it is. The goal of Firefly is to break the enemy's toughness bar, and from that point on, she's doing easy 120, 160k damage per attack. She's going to be at, if you build her correctly, she's 210 speed, so she's going to be acting 3 times before she exits her super mode, and she will probably wipe whatever it is that you're hitting, even with just fairly out-of-the-box, free-to-play friendly light cones. I will never tell you what you should pull. I will say if you have Ruan Mei already, she is probably the cheapest and best character that you can get at the moment as a power per price point character. She's very free-to-play friendly, assuming that you have Ruan Mei.
And speaking of how to build her and what to do there with Firefly, so I just want to run through really quickly the build, what you're going to be looking at as far as itemization. We touched a little bit on the stats, which, yeah, pretty straightforward. Probably one of the simplest in terms of how to build that we've ever seen. She really only needs restats, essentially, because the rest are fixed. But starting with the relic set, in classic Hoyoverse fashion, the new relic set that comes out when a new character comes out is the best set for that character. So in this case, the Iron Cavalry against the Scourge being the one of the new sets, Essentially, that's going to be the best in slot for her. So yeah, it increases the break effect with the 2-piece. The 4-piece set is if the wearer's break effect is 150% or higher, you are wanting to build her with break effect. You then ignore 10% of the enemy's defense when dealing break damage to them. And then when the wearer's break effect is 250% or higher, the super break damage they deal to the enemy targets additionally ignores another 15%. So effectively, you're looking at completely ignoring 25% enemy's armor during the super break damage moment. So don't have an Iron Cavalry against the Scourge set yet, or you're working on farming it, there is a kind of a substantial drop off, probably about like a 5% drop off from the numbers I've seen. From that to the second option being the Genius of the Brilliant Stars, because that has the built-in shred versus quantum weak enemies. And that's, again, the caveat here. We had this on another character review we did previously, and I forgot to mention it, so I always want to make sure I do mention whenever I mention this set, is Genius of the Brilliant Stars is only about a 5% drop off from her best in slot set if the enemy is weak to quantum. If the enemy is not weak to quantum, then it's an even more substantial drop off. It's about a 9 to 10% drop off in terms of the effective DPS, right? So ideally, we're just farming for Iron Cavalry against the Scourge, get the 4-piece, slap it on her, bing bang bosh, move on, right? As far as your planetary sets, you're going to be looking at Forge of the Calpagni Lantern, which is going to increase the wearer's speed by 6%. When the wearer hits an enemy targets with fire weakness, the wearer's break effect increases by 40%, which lasts 1 turn. And seeing as, I believe, Firefly, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't she impart fire weakness on a character even if they don't have it?
If she is in her ult, then yes, she will impart a fire weakness even if they do not have it.
Yeah. I remember that being part of her kit. I didn't know exactly where it was because I did not pull forward, but yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. So this planetary set is going to be the best set for her. Secondary would be Talia Kingdom of Banditry, which is just the flat out increases break effect by 16. If you're 16%, if your speed is higher than 145, you get an 20 break. Again, about a 5% drop off from the Forge of the Calpagni Lantern. Now, moving to those glorious things that we love to and why we farm artifacts, stats and substats, right? Again, I mentioned she's probably one of the easier characters to build because there's only 3 stats we care about, and that's going to be speed until we hit that break point, break effect percentage, and attack percentage. So in terms of what that looks like, the body, we're going to be looking for attack percentage as the main stat. Boots, the feet, we're going to be looking at speed for the main stat. For the sphere, again, we're jumping back to attack percentage, not necessarily fire damage, but actual attack percentage. And then finally, that link rope is going to be the break effect again, well. So we're ultimately looking for, ideally, 2,600 or more health, just so she's not super squishy. Speed, again, the break point for speed is going to be that 150 when she's outside of her combustion mode. As Steve mentioned, when she goes into that combustion mode, she's going to gain 60 speed, so she'll be over 210 speed, and hence getting a lot of those actions while she's in that ultimate. Break effect, we're going to be looking at, again, we're trying to stack this as much as possible, but we're going to be looking for about 360% break effect is ultimately the goal. When it comes to her light cones, obviously her signature light cone is going to be the best for her. But if you are a free to play or a low spender, or you just unfortunately don't have enough to pull for both her and her light cone, you do have a solid option in the Herta store where you have the On the Fall of an Aeon, which is the 5-star light cone that you get from, again, Herta store, increasing your attack whenever you do attack, stacking up to 4 times. And then when you inflict a weakness break, the damage increases for 2 turns by another substantial percentage, depending on how much you've superimposed it, right? So that's going to be the best free-to-play option, because that's from the Herta store if you're not getting our signature weapon. If you don't have enough tickets there in Herta store to spend to get that, the third best option then technically would be Indelible Promise. It is a 4-star. It's the one with Misha on the front. But this one, again, sensing a theme here, increases break. And then when you use your ultimate, it increases the crit rate, lasting a couple of turns. Again, crit rate not really as important so much, because I believe it's fixed with her once you get to a certain point.
Sorry, just to pop in right there. The reason why is because most of her damage comes from break effect.
Yeah.
And the way that the break effect calculation works, crit damage and crit rate do not apply. The reason why attack is so valued is that she has a talent that lets her convert attack over a certain value into break effect. So it just makes her more break effecty.
And they hit 360%. That's a hefty number of break effect. So that makes sense. My apologies there on my misunderstanding on crit rate. I guess I was conflating that with Robin, who's when she's in her ultimate, her crit rate is what it is. Yeah, completely different. So my apologies there. Thank you for that clarification. That's why you're talking about Firefly. You pulled her.
No problem. I just also really quickly wanted to slide in here. 360 break effect is very easy to hit if you have the right team with her, which is why you want Harmony MC and Ruan Mei, because you can hit that very simply. I currently have my Firefly hitting like 400 break effect with all the buffs up. And that's not a hyper balanced me spending.
I am just a normal not fire player, and so I do not know all of her mechanics. I just
You're good.
Numbers. I'm just a numbers guy.
Look, I get it. 360 sounds like a lot. It really
compared to any other character. It is a lot. But as you already mentioned earlier, the best performing Firefly team, like you mentioned, Firefly, Ruan Mei, Harmony Traveler, and Gallagher. Which Gallagher, just a little quick side piece on him. He is like consistently showing up as the top performing 4-star in MOC and Pure Fiction, especially when you're basing it around a super break team, because he does super break and he has some minimum sustain. But yeah, so again, Ruan Mei, Harmony Traveler, Gallagher, Firefly. If you don't have Ruan Mei, you'd sub her out for Pela, is what I've been seeing.
It's like a 50% damage drop, though.
Yeah, again, Ruan Mei would be the big hit if you can do that. And with that being said, I do want to talk about Ruan Mei because obviously she's being rerun right now.